Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Your Mark on the World show. I'm your host, Devin Thorpe, and we're excited to have with us a special guest today, Kalsum Lakhani, who is the CEO and founder of Invest to Innovate, a venture accelerator in Pakistan. Kalsum, thank you very much for joining us. It's great to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
Well, I should confess to everyone, lest there be any question, that you are not in Pakistan this morning. You are in the D.C. area, right?
Yes, as of 4 days ago.
We're glad to have you in town. Thank you for being here with us. We really appreciate you taking the time to do the show while you're here. Kalsum, tell us a little bit about how your program got started.
Sure. So I started Invest to Innovate in 2011. I was working in venture philanthropy before that, and I had been constantly meeting young entrepreneurs through my work that had amazing ideas to affect change around them, but really couldn't get the resources or the capital to start. And I was really interested in kind of why startup communities in newer markets weren't more developed or weren't really supporting entrepreneurs, and I was really excited about how to actually develop the ecosystem around that. So as a Pakistani and someone who was born in Pakistan, I wanted to launch Invest to Innovate in 2011 to basically support entrepreneurs in developing an untapped market. So Pakistan has been our first market. We've been operating since 2011, but our goal is to work in other untapped markets. So we hope to scale next year to a different market. Our hope is to go to Bangladesh actually next.
Well, fantastic. It's an interesting development. Of course, venture accelerators that operate on this model are a relatively new thing, something that's developed over the last decade. People had tried all different kinds of venture accelerators and incubators, but the model I kind of think of as being the Y Combinator model is a relatively new invention and really thriving. What's interesting is how well it seems to work in the social space as well as it does in the tech space. How have you borrowed specifically from what you've seen other accelerators do?
Yeah, I think there's so much that we can learn from the tech space. I mean, a lot of our companies, by the way, are also technology companies or using technology to a certain extent. So I think there's, from a business accelerator perspective, there's a lot that we can learn from Y Combinator, from Techstars, and from those really amazing models that we've seen work in the U.S. And that we're seeing come up all over the world. And I think ultimately what we're seeing is that a lot of startups have face a lot of the same issues, and that was something when we first started working with Invest to Innovate, and we first started working actually with individual entrepreneurs. We noticed that a lot of the entrepreneurs had a lot of the same problems. So issues related to, product market fit, like how to really get to market, customer acquisition issues, how to really become ready for investment, how to reduce risk for investors. So those are things that, looking at those programs that existed in the West was really exciting, but at the same time building it for a context in more risky markets was something that's been a really interesting and exciting challenge, because it means so much of what we do is not just about getting entrepreneurs ready for investors. It's all about reducing risk. It's about increasing trust in environments where really there's a huge lack of trust and transparency. So it's a much bigger challenge in some ways. But I think from the perspective of the curriculum that we look at, for the curriculum that we use in our accelerator, we've actually worked closely with accelerators in Brazil as well as Denmark to be able to build the curriculum that we have right now. So I think there's a lot of similar issues that entrepreneurs face around the world.
Sure, some things are truly global, and let's talk a little bit about your class. That you've just started a new cohort of entrepreneurs. Tell us a little bit about the new group.
Sure. So this is our third class of entrepreneurs. We've had 11 entrepreneurs so far. There's 5 companies in the current batch, and they're really exciting. I mean, they're all, we have 7 entrepreneurs, so 2 of the companies have co-founders. And what's exciting about it also, from being a female entrepreneur myself, is that we actually have 4 women and 3 men in the program. Wow. We've generally always had we've always had 1 woman in each of our batches. They've always been the most kick-ass out of all of them. and I can say that to the guys openly. But it's really exciting to have majority women in this program. They're doing just really exciting stuff in the education space. People that are working in, doing like a ride sharing app that's similar to what we've seen in the U.S. called Lyft, but really is more of like a civic minded app and thinking about how to actually, get more people in car seats to reduce urban congestion. One of our companies is trying to be a 21st century publishing house for really amazing education content that just doesn't exist. And so what's exciting about all of our companies from the past, but particularly the ones that are in our current batch, is just how, like, just by doing something in Pakistan, but doing it really innovatively and interestingly, you're actually probably one of the first companies to actually do it, because the market is so new and so ripe for it. So I think for us, it's really exciting to work with companies like that and to be able to match them with really amazing mentors locally as well as globally, and look at like examples that exist in other markets and how they can actually, adapt it for their companies and for Pakistan.
Well, I'm really excited about this company you mentioned, the Lyft competitor, the ride-sharing app,
Sure.
because of its potential to really solve some big problems, because it would reduce air pollution, it would reduce carbon emissions, it would reduce congestion. Boy, it really has some potential to make a big impact in big cities all around the world. I think of places I've visited like Mumbai and New Delhi and Los Angeles and Seattle that just have impossible traffic. And think about the potential, just huge, isn't it?
Huge. It's also interesting, right? Because Lyft and Sidecar and all these apps are very much part of the sharing economy trend that we've seen in the U.S. that's really taken off, because I think we are part of this sharing trend that exists right now, where people are very comfortable taking a ride from a stranger. But in markets like Pakistan, what's interesting is that Suvari, which is the name of this company, which literally means Lyft in Urdu, what's interesting with them is that there's a huge safety component with it, right? There's a lack of trust in that environment. So really trying to figure out how to position it for this market. There is a lot of carpooling that goes anyway, because Lahore is obviously a very high traffic city. But thinking about how to build it for that market is like really fascinating. And these entrepreneurs are really exciting in terms of really thinking about out of the box ways to adapt innovations that we've seen elsewhere, but for this particular market.
Are they at a point where they're actually using an app to give people rides? Is that happening yet, or are they still developing?
No, they're already, so being an accelerator, pretty much all of our companies at this stage are all positioned for, they're already at market at this point, or have some sort of prototype. And so actually what's interesting is that Suvari actually just is graduating from an incubator right now, which is really where they're able to really incubate the idea, and they're positioned really well now in our accelerator to really go to market, which is really where they are right now. And so they've already gotten 800 people signed up, but the problem now is how do we actually get people to constantly do and take the rides, as well as for the people that are drivers to actually constantly be on the road. And so it's a huge chicken before the egg concept of getting enough drivers on the road, but also getting enough people that are trying to take rides as well. And really coming up with a really interesting payment mechanism. Obviously in Pakistan, we don't necessarily pay through our phones. We do have mobile payments right now. So thinking about like prepaid models and other ways to actually adapt it for the market is like really interesting.
Do most people in the big cities in Pakistan have smartphones?
Yeah, so smartphone usage has actually increased pretty significantly. Pakistan has, I think, the last number I checked was 130 million mobile phone subscribers, but obviously a lot of those numbers are around dumb phones, like phones that are not necessarily smartphones.
Right.
3G actually just came into the country very recently. Savari's app is actually not focused on 3G services, since it's so spotty and it's in and out, and it's still something that's being adjusted. So 3G literally came into the country a couple months ago this year. So that's going to drastically change, I think, the way that people actually consume and use apps. As well as use apps for payments and things like that. But currently, people do have a lot of smartphones in the major cities. They just happen to use it not because of data issues. They just happen to use it for phone calls, or they use their data versus using 3G to be able to access things.
Well, it's really an exciting trend to see the deployment of faster networks and smarter phones around the world. Of course, in urban Pakistan, this isn't the same problem that it is elsewhere, but as more and more people get access to smartphones, that will be their only access to the internet for a lot of people, and it will be exciting to see billions of people getting access to the internet for the first time over the next few years. So that will create more opportunities for your entrepreneurs, I imagine.
Definitely, and I think Pakistan, we just released an entrepreneurship ecosystem study, Invest, Innovate did, recently, and what's really exciting about Pakistan is that there's so much hunger and drive in this country, and despite the fact that internet penetration is around 11 MOOCs and massive open online courses that exist, Pakistan is in the top 10 countries around the world that are actually consuming MOOCs right now, which means that the fact that we still have relatively a lower internet penetration means that there's a huge amount of people within that number that are really hungry to try to take these very globally accredited courses and high quality courses, to be able to be exposed to those global global education and that type of quality. And so I think for me it's a huge sign of what the internet can do, what it can expose a population to, but also for Pakistan specifically, it's just amazing to see how hungry and excited and driven this population is, and it's a very young population as well.
It's exciting and fun to think about. Where do you go from here with I2I?
So, we have a lot of things that we're kind of baking in the pipeline right now that are really exciting. We're looking to start investing in our companies ourselves. We're looking to expand to other markets. We're building a lot of really interesting products that we're really excited about internally that really hope to address a lot of the issues in the broader ecosystem. And so Invest Innovate is so much more than an accelerator. We have an angel investor network that has around 15 members of all local Pakistanis that are investors. From a perspective of our consulting side, we get to work on some really we get to work on some really exciting projects that are thinking about crowdfunding issues, thinking about how we can build products like an investor toolkit that can give guidance to foreign and local investors on a 101 guide how to invest. So for us, we're really excited at looking at this gambit of ways to actually support the broader ecosystem, and that's really our approach. And so when we go to a new country, our hope isn't to just kind of come in and plant an incubator or an accelerator. It's actually to think about the broader environment and how are we supporting a better enabling environment for entrepreneurs.
Well, Kalsoom, tell us a little bit about how you would like people to engage with you. I'm sure there are entrepreneurs who are interested in learning more. There may be people who want to support or invest in your entrepreneurs. Give us some sense of how people can connect with you to learn more or help support what you're doing.
Sure. So you can follow us on Facebook. You can just look up Invest to Innovate. It's the number 2. You can follow us on Twitter. We constantly volunteering, people that are excited about our work. I'm really excited to talk to people that have really exciting startup communities coming up in their countries that are unexpected. I've talked to people from all over the world, and I've been to places like Cambodia and Kazakhstan, places that you wouldn't expect to see startup communities really coming up. And I've been so excited to see and learn about, innovations that are happening there. And so for us, the best way to connect is on social media. You're welcome to email me as well. It's just K. Lakhani, my name, first initial, last name at investtoinnovate.com. But that's just the best way to get involved, is just to kind of be part of the conversation.
Fantastic. Well, Kalsoom, thank you very much for joining us. It's been a pleasure to have you, and we certainly wish you success in your noble endeavors.
Great. Thank you so much. Thanks so much for having me.
All righty. Let's do some good.